Hi everybody, welcome back to STEM at Home. I'm Miss Caudill and I'll be doing a fun project with you today called Rainbow Jar. I'm glad you're here with me, and before we get started, I wanted to remind you about my engineering design process that I use every time I do a STEM activity. Science, technology, engineering, and math are so important in our society. So hopefully when you grow up, you'll pick a career in STEM. Anytime you can imagine something, if you go through your engineering design process, is a possibility to become a reality. All you have to do after you've imagined is plan, and proper planning involves the things we've talked about before: sitting down to research, to interview, brainstorming. Then you could get in there and create whatever it is that you want to do. Go back and improve upon it. Be willing to go back multiple times and make sure that you're doing the best that you can to make something. And then after you've improved upon it as many times as possible, you're going to launch it and let the world see it, and you never know what could happen, right? So we're going to do a project today called Rainbow Jar, as I said. And before we dig into the actual project, I need to explain a few things to you. So everything that we know of in our universe is either energy, which is like the sun, or electricity, or matter. Matter is everything else. So you're made of matter, your table is made of matter, the food you eat is made out of matter, the air you breathe is made out of matter. Matter comes in all different forms, right? There are three basic forms: solid, liquid, and gas. Those are the three basic states of matter. There is another, plasma, but we're not going to talk about that one today. So solid, liquid, and gas are the three basic states of matter. In my classroom, I like to teach my kids about the three basic states of matter by showing them what happens in each state. So everything, as I said, living, non-living, everything around you is made out of matter. So all of these items or living creatures, if you would break them down to their smallest teeny tiny bits, those would be atoms and molecules. So atoms and molecules are those teeny tiny particles that make up everything on Earth. So those teeny tiny atoms and molecules behave in different ways according to the type of matter that they are. So you have solid molecules, liquid molecules, and gas molecules, right? Well, I'm going to show you or demonstrate to you how these states of matter act. So when you're thinking about solid matter, solid is very tightly packed together, tight, right? Can barely move, like as if you have a jacket on holding you super tight. That's what solids are like as far as the molecules. They're super tight. You can't break through. Liquids, on the other hand, flow. Liquids take the shape of their container, right? So today we're going to be dealing with liquids. Liquids flow. And then the third state of matter is gas. The molecules of gases are crazy all over the place. You cannot pin them down, right? Those are gas molecules. Okay, so those are ways that we can illustrate the three states of matter. Today, we're going to be using different liquids to make a rainbow jar. And the science behind our rainbow jar is that liquids have different densities. Density is a word that you might not have heard before. So I want to show you something. I have 2 cups. These are identical cups. Okay? Identical cups. One cup has a few marbles. The other cup has a lot of marbles. As I hold these identical cups in my hand, this one with way more is much heavier. You could try it for yourself. Get 2 equal-sized containers and put a lot of things in one of the cups and just a few things in the other cup, and you'll be able to tell that the cup with more will be much heavier. So a measure of how heavy matter can be, and in this case liquids, a measure of how heavy they are, is that vocabulary word in science called density, okay? Density is a measure of how much matter is in an object divided by how much space that object takes up. I'm going to give you an example here. So objects like my cup with only a few marbles and others with just a few molecules have low density. That means those objects are light. On the other hand, I have this cup with lots of marbles, and that cup has a high density, and those objects feel heavy. So that is a simple explanation for density. Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about the materials that you need to do this project. It's kind of a long list, but most of the things I'm sure you probably have at home. So my materials list is right here, but I want you to go now and get a piece of paper and a pencil. So remember, press the good old pause button now. Okie dokie, you ready, set, play. Keep going, right? Okay, so if you have your paper and pencil, get your mom or dad or some adult to help you, right? And you want to gather these materials that I have on my list here. So I'm going to pull this up very carefully and show you. Minimal damage there. Okay. All right. Starting at the top of the list, we have a tall see-through container like a mason jar. I have a mason jar. Okay. We're going to use honey, light corn syrup, dish soap like Dawn or Palmolive, 100% pure olive oil, rubbing alcohol, water, food coloring, and a medicine dropper. So I know this is kind of a long list, so you might want to pause right now on the video and write this all down. Okay, here's your materials. All right, now I'm going to put this to the side. You'll be able to still see the materials that we're using because they're all back here behind me. So behind me, I have everything all set up. So now I'm going to show you my rainbow jar. We're going to make it together. So please make sure you ask an adult for permission and get help with this, okay? Because it could be messy if you don't. All right, here I go. I'm going back in my corner. Now, the first thing that I said that we needed was a mason jar, right? A tall see-through container like this. And what I'm gonna do is right here, I have all my ingredients lined up. It's gonna be really important that you follow these steps of the procedure exactly how I explain it, or your rainbow might not come out properly. Okay, so we're gonna have to do a little mixing. We're gonna use some food coloring. So please make sure that you have some paper towels handy in case you have the spill, and maybe you wanna cover whatever you're working on, whatever surface you're working on, with something that it would be okay if it gets a drop or two on it, right? But food coloring cleans up fairly easily. So the first item that we need, or the first liquid rather, that we're going to use is honey. You can buy honey at the grocery store. It's near the peanut butter. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure as I'm pouring these liquids, I'm going to pour them in the middle of the bottle. I am not going to get any around the sides. I want to make sure that I stay in the middle of the jar. So I'm going to pour some honey straight down into the middle of the jar. There's no need to really measure. You just want to make sure that you have a good amount of each, because these are your different colors. All the different liquids are going to represent different colors of the rainbow. So it takes a few minutes to get enough, but once you do, you'll have a nice layer there on the bottom of your jar of honey, and that is our orange color. Now the next thing we're going to do is mix light corn syrup with some food coloring. I don't have purple, but I have red and blue, and as you know, red and blue together make purple. So I'm very carefully going to use my cup here, and I'm going to pour in some light corn syrup. That should be enough. It's very sticky. So I want you to notice as you pour the honey and the corn syrup, they feel very thick. There's a very important science word called viscosity. Viscosity is a measure of a liquid's resistance to flow. Resistance means push back, right? So some liquids flow a lot easier than others. You'll notice that the first few liquids we pour into the jar are going to have a much higher or thicker consistency or viscosity. That also goes back to our word density, right? They have heavy densities, okay? So I'm going to take a couple drops of my food coloring red, and I'm going to take a couple of drops of my food coloring blue. Oopsie. See, made a little spill. That's okay. All right, now I'm going to carefully stir up the blue and red into the corn syrup, and you'll watch it change color, and then voila, you have purple corn syrup. So the purple corn syrup is going to be the next layer in our rainbow jar. My dish detergent is next, but that's a kind of big container, so I'm just going to slide it over for a moment. Okay, so now it's important that you use separate glasses to mix the food coloring before you pour it into the actual rainbow jar. Okay. So now, being very careful, I'm not going to get it around the sides, just in the middle. I'm going to pour slowly a layer of light corn syrup. And as I pour this layer, it will settle on top of the honey, because honey, you guessed it, has a higher density than corn syrup. Okay. There we go. All right. There's my honey corn syrup. You're not going to be able to tell really great as you can in the light here. So when you put it in the light, it's going to be so cool. You're going to love it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to use is some dish detergent. Here's the thing. If you use blue dish detergent, you're going to want to take regular water and add green food coloring. But if you have green dish detergent, you're going to want to use blue food coloring. It doesn't matter what order they're in. We're not following the Roy G. Biv pattern of a rainbow because remember, we're following the pattern of density, right? The density of these different liquids. So here's my container that I am going to make sure that I get it only in the middle of my jar. And this is going to be my blue coloring of my rainbow. Now, I bet you can guess what out of these three liquids has the lightest density. It is the dishwashing liquid, and that is why we put the dishwashing liquid on top of the corn syrup, and we put the corn syrup on top of the honey. So now you have three cool layers. I can already see mine starting to form. I get really excited over this. Science is awesome, right? Okay. The next thing I'm going to use is regular water, just out of the tap, right? I'm going to drop a few drops of green food coloring into my water. You want to make sure you do it very slowly and gently because I myself am pretty heavy-handed and sometimes I put too much and it ends up being way too dark. Stir it up. Okay, now I am slowly and carefully going to, where do you think I'm going to pour it? In the middle of the jar, right? I'm going to pour my water into the middle without getting it on the sides, hopefully too much. Now the water, as you can see, it has very low viscosity, meaning that it flows very easily. It actually has a much lighter density than the dishwashing liquid, which is lighter than the corn syrup, which is lighter than the honey. Okay, so next I am going to pour in my olive oil. Olive oil is going to be the yellow of our rainbow. Now for the olive oil, you want to make sure you pour a very thick layer. And I'll explain the reason for that after you pour it. So use 100% pure olive oil if you can. Some moms or dads or adults might cook with a different type of oil, but you need to make sure it's 100% olive oil for our rainbow jar, okay? So now I'm gonna pour my olive oil in. And as I'm pouring it in, I'm starting to notice a pretty cool layer of yellow forming there. So now we're going to do the final layer of our rainbow. So for the final layer of our rainbow, it's going to be red. You need rubbing alcohol and a medicine dropper. You could buy this at a pharmacy, or if you have a younger sibling, maybe you might not want to use this if your mom uses this for medicine or something, but you can get one of these for like $1 at the drugstore. Okay, or you might have one already in your home. So what we're going to do here is carefully pour this rubbing alcohol into the glass. Now I want to show you something neat about the density of the red food coloring versus the density of the rubbing alcohol. And you'll notice this while you're doing this project. So you drop in a couple of drops of red and then just wait a moment. And you will notice after a minute, it does take a minute, right, that the red pulls up on the bottom of the glass and the rubbing alcohol kind of sits on top of the food coloring. So that is because the food coloring has a heavier density or a higher density than the alcohol. But of course, for the purpose of our experiment, I'm gonna stir it up. I'm gonna click that lightly. Now I'm gonna put my medicine dropper into the alcohol, and very carefully, we're gonna need to do this very carefully. I think actually, just kidding, I'm gonna do a couple more drops of food coloring because it's not quite red enough. So this is one of those times that I have to go back to my engineering design process and improve a little bit because I wasn't ready. And that's okay. If you make a mistake, you can go back and fix it, right? Okay, so here we go. You gotta pull the red food colored alcohol into the medicine dropper. And notice how all of the liquids we put straight into the middle. This one, you're gonna do the exact opposite. You have to get it right on the rim of the jar, and I'll show you. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, first I'm gonna move my items out of the way here. Give yourself plenty of room, right? I always make sure that my elbows are not gonna knock anything over because I'm very clumsy. Okay, here we go. So this red needs to go right on the edge of the jar. Put it right on the lid. Drop by drop, very slowly. Now, as you do this, you are going to notice the red is not going to sink unless you pour it straight into the middle. So please be very careful to keep your medicine dropper right on the edge of the jar. It takes a little while for this part because you're putting it in only one drop at a time. And if you spill a little bit around the edge, make sure you use a paper towel to wipe it up. Good, right? Alcohol does not have the greatest smell. It smells a little strong. And as long as you don't break the barrier that the oil puts between the rubbing alcohol and the regular water that you colored green, your rainbow will turn out beautifully. And I'm just going to keep going a little bit more to make my red a little bit thicker. And I'm almost done. So I really hope that you guys enjoy doing this project because I think it comes out really cool. Now, after I've sealed my lid on, I'm going to wipe the edges. Okay, and then I'm going to make sure the lid's on tight. And I am going to bring this over to you to see. Ta-da! It's a rainbow jar. And the reason why it's a rainbow is because all of these liquids have different densities. So now you have this cool jar with all these different colors. Awesome, right? Well, thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Take care.